Okay, so we are live with Josh Stone here talking about Book Token. They're going through their launch really, really soon. I think it's tomorrow. Is that right? Is that right?
Wednesday. Maybe it's tomorrow for you. I don't know what time it is there. Yeah,
Yeah, a little.
we're counting down the hours, counting down the hours.
Yep. Okay. So I'm pretty excited about this one and seeing what you guys have been up to over the last few months since we last spoke. If you haven't seen the interview I originally did with Josh here, check out our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find the previous interview with Josh that I did about Book Token. It gives you a really big rundown and overview of the project. But for those that are joining in for the first time, Josh, could you give us an update and first off, a short description about what Book Token is, and then an update of what's been going on for the last few months?
Yeah, for sure. The high level version really is we're putting books on the blockchain. So ebooks and audiobooks. We're not just uploading PDFs that everybody can see. We actually have a full DRM encryption solution. So everything about the book itself is encrypted. It's stored decentrally, and we use NFTs to change ownership between users. So really the problem we're solving right now is that if you buy an ebook or an audiobook from any retailer, you're not actually buying the ebook, you're just buying a license to view that book. And so we're sort of fundamentally changing that and using blockchain and a Web3 architecture to make it possible. So once you read a book, then you could resell it, you could collect books, you could give them to friends, just like you could with a physical book. So since we last talked, I think we spoke maybe in January or February, maybe it was March, I can't remember now. It feels like a couple of years now. So we've done work. I think initially typical startup, we've pivoted many times as we've been going down this journey and just trying to make the right decisions at the right time. And we came to the conclusion that we felt like it was better to go ahead and build the product than try to focus on crowd selling the token, so that we could establish a bigger value and really focus on the utility side of it. And then that, giving a better value to what the token is and why we have our own internal reward token as well. So we've been hard at work at that. And like I said, Wednesday, we launch live with our first NFT book. We've got 10,000 of those that we're rolling out, and those will be the first ever 10,000 books on chain of what will be literally hundreds of millions of titles that we plan to put out there.
That's a lot of books to launch with. That's pretty exciting. Is it anything that you can tell us yet? Any of the titles that you can tell us?
Yeah, so the initial title that we're launching with, we actually chose to launch with the Gutenberg Bible, the original 1456 one that Gutenberg printed. So we picked that for kind of a variety of reasons. It's not necessarily for any political or religious statement. It's more of technological parallel of what he really did back then with movable type and inventing a printing press, giving people the ability to transfer knowledge at an exponentially faster rate. And what we're doing with Web3 technology and basically doing that same thing, but allowing, now I could send you a book on the other side of the world in a matter of seconds, right? And that doesn't exist. And then we picked it also too, just from a technical standpoint, it's a gigantic book. I mean, it's literally 10 times bigger than any regular published book. So it forced us and the team to have to really work through a lot of technical hurdles and how to handle that. So the book itself actually contains over 70 high-res images. So what's different than a regular NFT, right? A regular NFT has like an image that's attached to like in the metadata.
Yeah.
Within this, we basically it's the entire book. So there's 70 high-res images from the original printing. There's over 650,000 words in it. There's an embedded video and a media player, and all of it is completely decentralized and encrypted. So it completely exists on chain, and when you own the NFT book, you own that. So we wanted to pick it as just kind of a representation that we can kind of add to and just demonstrate from a technology standpoint what's possible with the technology that we've been developing.
That sounds like quite a technological hurdle. It seems quite hard to be able to put all that stuff onto the blockchain and get it all working. Do you have a demo or anything that you can show us in regards to what this might look like for users when they jump on the platform?
For sure. I can walk you through that here. Let me share my screen. So this actually is our kind of coming soon page that I've got up. And I will say, just as a plug, since we're doing an interview, this is our whitelist sign up, which closes in 4 hours and 53 minutes. So
Right, okay.
if you get to it. So this is actually our DApp interface. So this is where you connect a SIP30 wallet. So you can connect, an Eternal or Yori or Nami. I've got Nami installed here, and this is all in testnet. So basically, I come in here, I can see my book NFTs that I have. These are some other ones, Moby Dick that we've been testing with. And so this particular instance, and I will say just the interface in general, it doesn't have fireworks going off. It isn't like super cool and exciting looking. And that is purely by design, because the goal here for us is really on that, in the utility side of it, is that our goal being, we want to onboard a tremendous amount of people that are not crypto native. So what you're going to see rolling out in coming months, we're going to have a fiat rails and custodial wallet system that we're integrating with, that is going to allow even more seamless access, because we want to onboard people who have never been involved in crypto, but our model basically allows us to go to publishers and authors, and they can utilize their existing marketing and social channels to bring people into a crypto environment. Our goal really here, right, is like, how can we build, a Cardano ecosystem like exponentially? And so even with that, I'll say when you look side by side in the numbers of like just the raw volume of people in crypto, it's around like 100 to 150 million. When you look at ebooks and audiobooks, in the next 12 months, there'll be over like 1.1 billion people that purchased a digital book.
It's a lot of people.
Which is just way bigger. So at our last startup, we had around 6 million. We have done another ebook startup in the past and sold it to a private equity group several years back. And we had 6 million users there. So when we look at the Cardano system, and we picked it for a variety of reasons that we can, dive deeper in. But our goal really is, we want to hit a 10%. And so even if we just get a 1% of that total market, that's 11 million users, which that is 3 times the size of the current Cardano base. And we think that's an easy first stop. When you're looking at 10% of total market, we're talking about, over 110 million users. So that's like, our goal roadmap wise. And that's why this interface is as simple as it is. Like, it needs to be super simple, that is, isn't technical. Yep. So, and you'll see actually when we do our release, because we're working on a couple things right now where you'll have a few more capabilities here that roll out when we launch Wednesday. But right now you can click on read. You can open the book, you can click through it. It's just like a regular ebook. It has a table of contents. We've embedded images in here. So this is actually the image that's specific to the NFT that I bought, which is really cool, because what it means and what it demonstrates is that I in all 10,000 books, they all have unique covers, but then they all have the cover image contained within the actual EPUB itself, which, the underlying concept is, this means that we could make one-off books that are truly one of one, that have content in them that is very unique to just that book.
Yep.
So it works just like a regular ebook. You've got a table of contents, you can click through and paginate through, and has text. A couple things too to point out. This video here is, click play. This is like our little teaser video about the Gutenberg Bible, and just a little high level explainer video. We embedded this here, and it is actually the video is stored on chain. It's encrypted. It's being pulled down here. It's being decrypted and then embedded into this player in the book, which is amazing, really, right? Because if you think about the current state of NFTs, it's expanding to a new what we consider like a new asset class, right? You can
Yep.
own an NFT, and you're using it to access content that is behind, that nobody else can access. So it obviously will work for audiobooks and other media types. And if I click through here, then you get okay. So this is like the original cover that we based our art off of from I was like 1456, yeah.
Yeah.
And this, we've embedded these high resolution images in here. As you click through, we've got images of the original Gutenberg Bible in here that are scattered throughout. That are honestly just kind of beautiful works of art. And then all of this text. So the text itself is actually all in Latin. I don't read
Josh,
Latin.
if you're trying to get me to read here, it's not working.
Got to read in a different language. We wanted to demonstrate that we could do different languages, and we'll be rolling out language packs and localization in the coming months as well.
Yeah.
But out of the gate, we were like, hey, this would be kind of fun, just as an example, right? And there's tons and tons of text, and it just keeps going on and on. And then I'll hit other sections here that break out and have more art. But really, all the text of the 650,000 plus words that are in here. And just for example, like a normal book is about 50 to 60,000 words. So this is literally 10 times the size of a normal book, which was a great challenge for us, because actually earlier on we were testing some books. They were processing right. We were creating test NFTs. And then we went to process this and kind of broke some of the stuff that we were trying to process, just because it's such a gigantic file. I mean, it's literally gigs of I think it's about 4 gigs of data when you tally all of it, everything up that we have stored on chain and
wow,
bringing down. But it loads lightning fast, and yeah, it's pretty wild. So that's kind of the basic, beginning of the bookshelf and what we've created.
That's very cool. Just sorting out a little bit of an audio issue here, but it should be okay now. Yeah. It's looking really cool, and I can't wait to play around with it a little bit more. Now, there are some questions that are coming through from the audience, and I'll just get them answered really quickly while we're here. Now, someone asked, will the platform allow anyone to publish a book? So I know you're onboarding various independent publishers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're actually talking to quite a few independent publishers right now too. At some point, we will have like a fully, a full suite of tools for authors to use, self-published authors. The barrier there is we have to make sure that somebody's not going out and there's a lot of potential copyright infringement, right? And since these books live on chain forever, you don't want to be in it's one thing if, somebody made, whatever, a Star Wars image or something. It's a whole other thing if somebody takes, Star Wars, a book that's copyrighted by Disney, and publishes the book and starts selling the NFT, because we can't take it down, right? Once it's out on the blockchain, it's there. So some of the stuff we're building on the independent author stuff is basically a lot of that is checking for rights that exist already. So we'll probably actually be rolling out some one-off independently published books as examples, in tandem with some from different publishers. And but it's a roadmap, so it's definitely going to take a timeline to get there. But the plan is to functionally the same tools exist, right? To what we've built and the way that it creates the book works the same from our perspective. If you're an independent author or if you're a publisher with 100,000 titles in your inventory, it doesn't make any difference to us, really. Good question, though.
Okay, that's really cool. Now, there's another question about the scalability of all this data. Now, you said there were gigs of data being stored for that one Gutenberg Bible. How scalable is this? Like, can you scale more and put more large books of that volume? And when you have like thousands and thousands of titles on here, how are you going to deal with all of that processing and storage?
So right now, I'll say, we're using well, basically, the storage isn't as big of an issue as much as the complexity of sharding out all of these files. So as long as what we built is like, as long as we're breaking all of these down to sizes that we can pull down at a fast enough rate that the user is not encumbered. And then when we release mobile apps, we will actually cache some of that on their device, and then we'll be constantly handshaking to verify that they still have ownership. So we can, in effect, we can load a lot of the data that we're pulling down locally, so that your book performs at a faster, a more smooth rate, and you're not experiencing any lag. But the overall file size isn't, I think, going to be an issue. Most books honestly aren't going to be this big. Some graphical books, maybe. We've done some stuff with cookbooks in the past that can be quite heavy, and even at the upper end of them, they're hundreds of megs maybe. But I don't think we're going to have. We've dealt with a lot of the file size issues in the past. So I think as decentral storage grows as well, and it's possible we may work in a closer partnership with some other decentralized storage systems to develop some custom solutions just to make sure that it performs well. But right now we're just using IPFS, which has been great, and honestly, it's more responsive and faster than what we thought that it was going to be. When you load up the first book and start turning pages, and you're like, oh man, I hope this doesn't take 2 minutes to load, and it's just like pow, 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 and you're just flying through it, and it's like, oh my gosh, it loads faster than what we think we were loading when we were running central storage.
Right. Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely awesome. Oh, Josh, I'll just get you to shut down the screen share. I'll just switch back to the regular mode.
No.
So if anyone else has any questions in regards to the project in general, or comments on the audio feed, please let me know in the comments on the YouTube stream. Now, with the minting, when does this exactly start, and how much is it going to cost to be able to mint this first Gutenberg Bible?
So our first one is a lottery, and we're including all the first numbers in it. It's 180 ADA, and like I said, there's 10,000. Trying to think if there's other details about it. We did preload all that on JPEG Store and CNFT, so everybody can check out and get a preview of what the covers look like. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, so with this book and with a couple of the other books that we're going to be releasing, this is basically going to be our way of how we whitelist book token purchasers. So if you own this book, and this book will also give you access to a private book club that is effectively how we'll whitelist for our reward token. So when we launch it, because we do get the question often of when token, like pretty much multiple times a day, which is exciting.
It's in the name of the company, book token.
It's in the name of the company. And so honestly, that we were going down that path. I think as time has gone on in the last 6 months or so, we've continued to upgrade over and over multiple times our legal counsel. So we have, at this time, I think we have probably 6 law firms that we are working with. The reason is we're moving into a heavily regulated IP space. Effectively, when you really get into books, like what a book really is just intellectual property that like a company owns, and they have the means to distribute it. So there's a tremendous amount of complexity on that side, which puts a lot of pressure on us. And really, where we're entering this space, and our primary competition are gigantic online retailers, effectively, who we're competing with. So we can't just come out and say we're some random project and we just want to throw a token out there and raise a bunch of capital and try to go build something. We've got to be much more methodical about, okay, what's the impact from regulatory perspective, how is our organizational structure, where is everything based. There's a tremendous amount of legwork on the legal side and regulatory side that we're having to go through to make sure that when we put it out, that it's, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted and everything's on the up and up, because we don't want to come at it with a, finger in the air, just, black market
praying
approach.
that you did it all right.
We don't care, and we're just like, here, we'll just raise some money, because we will get promptly shut down, because there's too much IP and too many large publishers that are getting involved that we can't go that route. So our hope is in the next couple months, honestly, we're making a tremendous amount of progress on the token release, and I'm super excited about it. And I think just maybe to give like some context to it too, is like why it effectively exists.
Yeah, the whole
so
read to earn system is quite an interesting mechanism, and I think you should dig into that, because a lot of people won't know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So our mission fundamentally is really two things, which is decentralized knowledge and then incentivize learning. So the decentralizing part is kind of what I showed, is like how we're putting books on chain. The incentivizing knowledge is that token piece. So if you think about, it's basically a read to earn model. So as you read, we have a distribution schedule that stretches out, and there's a certain amount of book token that we're going to release every day. And it will be based on how much that each user has read. So people that read more earn more of that. People that read less obviously earn less of that pot that's distributed each day. Those tokens then can be used to purchase books on our platform. They can help provide a discount. It's effectively a reward system. The closest thing you can think of is like almost airline miles, right? It's like airline miles or credit card points. So as you read, you're earning them, and it gives you a discount. Now, the thing that I think, we get a question a lot of times, like, well, why is there value in that? Or, why would it be valuable? If you think of, our release schedule is over 52 years. So if you take a 52-year timeline, every day there's an allotment that gets distributed out of the token reserve that we have for it. Early on, there's going to be less readers, obviously. It's just like Bitcoin mining. And when you read in the earlier days, you're going to earn more token. When you stretch that out over the course, of 52 years, even at 5 years from now, right? If we do well and we hit the targets that we want to hit, let's say that we kind of biff it and we only get to 10 or 11 million users. Well, 10 or 11 million people that are reading every day, which only represents 1% of the total market, are competing for effectively what will be about 168,000 tokens. So you divide 168,000 tokens by 11 million people, all of a sudden you're having to fight really hard to earn this token. And then from like a circular kind of an ecosystem standpoint, on the publisher and author side, there's certain parts of the system that we're going to require book token in order to facilitate certain functions. So we're going to have like an enterprise marketing system. So, which is great because it'll facilitate communication between publishers and authors with the readers who have purchased their work, which that doesn't exist in an easy to use way right now. It's all retailers wall off their purchasers because they're trying to sell them, TVs and, other goods, and they're not really focused on connecting authors with their audience. So when a new author comes out with a title, from a series, they want to be able to communicate to their audience and have their audience support them. So certain things inside the system from an author and publisher perspective, it's going to be required for them to use the book token too. So effectively, we think of book token as basically a stored, the stored power of reading and learning. And as you, as a reader, read and you unlock it and you earn it, then you have the capability then to sell that back to other, entities or in marketplaces or authors or publishers that need that to feed the system with more content.
Yeah. Now this ties into a viewer's question as well. How does the royalties work then for the publishers or people putting their content up on the platform. So if I'm an author and I go through you guys and publish it and the book's traded through the marketplace, how do the royalties work in this aspect?
So that's a good question. It's a really good question. The from there's kind of a couple different paths. So I'll take the independent side first because it's maybe geared more towards the question. Because on the publisher side, publisher royalties are worked out with authors, and they sort of have agreements. Now we're introducing like a class of NFTs, and there's a lot of murkiness, and we've been doing some development with legal around building out those terms with publishers so that makes sense. But from an independent author, you're basically setting a royalty structure of what you want to earn on initial purchase, and then on your resale purchases. So, and there's different ways that you can do that when you start digging into the smart contract side of it. So some of those things can be represented in the metadata structure, which is what the marketplaces respect and pay those back to those wallets. When you get more into the Plutus smart contract side of it, you can bake some of that stuff in so that it never changes, which is great because then an author's receiving these residuals in perpetuity forever on every sale of their book for the life of them and all their heirs and so on and so forth. And so I'll rewind a little and say on the publisher side, it gets a bit more complex because what happens, we get too deep in the weeds, but big publishers effectively act as like holding companies, and imprints are what their subsidiaries are, and they focus on particular genres. So one might be a romance one might be, a biography or nonfiction one. And so it gets much more complex on that side because we're having to set up a lot of custodial wallets with each book so that those get paid, and then the rights to those books can change because one publisher could buy a certain imprint, and then it would transfer all of those associated wallets where they collect royalties so that they are able to capture the right royalties at the right time of purchase. And that is a big issue in the industry where there's a lot of friction, is there's not a seamless, very easy way for publishers to manage royalty payments and rights. But with blockchain, which is great, obviously it's immutable and it's instant and it's timestamped. So when something sells and you're expecting that royalty to hit your wallet, it's and the other side of that too, I'll say, is a lot of authors have been experiencing this kind of terrible phenomenon with their books on certain retailers where somebody will buy the book and read it and then ask for a return from Amazon and say that they didn't want it or didn't like it or whatever, and which is terrible for the author because then they're trying to put out work and make a living, and the retailer just gives them a refund because they don't care, and then the net effect is now you're actually in a negative balance on that book because there are certain costs to produce and send it that you're liable for because it came back on a return. Whereas if it's, a digital object that I sold my book to Pete and Pete's like, well, I want a refund. And you're like, well, it's your book now. So if you want to sell it, and you can go sell it on a marketplace and recover it. But there's, it changes fundamentally the way that we can handle refunds. And there's just a ton of benefits to the actual ownership side of it.
That refund scenario sounds absolutely terrible. I can't say I've ever read a book and then asked for a refund. So it's a terrible
happening
aspect
a lot
for authors to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess with this aspect with the secondary market, it opens up that whole new revenue stream that authors never had before, because publishers always rely on that first book sale, but now there's suddenly a secondary revenue stream from that secondary market when people on sell their books that they don't want anymore, or recover some funds to buy a new book, whatever it might be. So they don't want to keep it in their collections. So that's absolutely amazing and really good for many of the authors. Now, with the limits, like most NFT collections, you're saying like there's 10,000s of these Gutenberg Bible ones. Are authors going through and going to put limits on these NFTs books that they're minting, or will they make it unlimited so they can continuously mint more? What's the scenario with that?
So it's very flexible. So what we're experiencing really with publishers is that it's very much a case-by-case basis. So while one book, it might make sense to do an extremely limited collectible run of 10 books, with others, they're interested in more the social building aspect. So we're talking to some that want to do 100,000 plus run. If you think about it a lot like print books, it's a much easier. Print books have more in common really with like what we're doing than a traditional ebook. A print book, you run a certain, the first edition of a book, and they might run a certain number of those to print, and they take them out and they try to sell them, and they do well or they don't do well, and that's sort of how they make a judgment on whether or not they should print more. Our system works, almost the same exact way. You could do a more limited print run, see how those do. You could come back and do a second edition. A lot of times authors want to change stuff or add an extra chapter, or maybe there's a foreword, or they want to include some additional information. And so you can do multiple runs of it. Now you can't go back and change something that is already on chain. So once the first edition is out there, it's on the blockchain and it's immutable, and you can't go back and say, well, I spelled something wrong and I need to change it. It's like, well, it's just like print. If you printed it and it was printed wrong, then it's printed wrong and you're stuck with it the way that it is, and you can't undo.
Yep. Okay, brilliant. Now there's a couple more questions that come through here. So people are trying to prep themselves for the mint on Wednesday or Thursday morning for me. What do they need to do to get ready for the mint to experience and buy their first book off the book token platform?
Yeah, good question. So we connect to browser wallet right now with our DApp. So as long as you purchase it with a SIP30 wallet like Nami or Eternal or Yori, and I think maybe a couple others that we've tested out. I have to look and see, but most of the all of the common Cardano wallets we have gone through and tested. You just need to not use an exchange to send ADA. And we have a very simple minting process. So we started out, I think, and we're, as we develop further, we'll have more advanced sort of multi-sig purchases and adding fiat rails so that you can purchase and generate a wallet. But right now, as it stands, it will be a pretty simple minting process of just sending the ADA to an address and then immediately returns a randomized one from the lottery into your wallet. And then you can connect on our DApp and read it. And it works just like any other NFT. So you can go to JPEG Store to resell it or CNFT or wherever. And it functions and feels exactly like an NFT once you have it.
Great, brilliant. So anyone that's familiar with Cardano NFTs in general will be able to just plug away and be able to mint, etc. Now, I'm assuming you're saying like you're going to be able to mint with one of the Web3 wallets, like a SIP30 wallet. We'll be able to just pay directly into a wallet address as well if users are using older wallets to mint, such as Daedalus.
I think, you could use Daedalus, but we need the capability from, if you want to read it, you need to be able to connect to it from your browser. So it needs to be have an extension along with that wallet. You could, certainly store it there, but you're not going to have the DApp functionality. I think as time goes on, we're going to get more detailed and expand functionally how we can do that and how we can spin up custodial wallets so you could store multiple different things different ways, and then have advanced functionality so you could send books off chain if you want to store those. But what we've built in right now, there's some regulatory things that have to happen before we can allow that to happen. As far as us generating custodial wallets to hold those books, it opens us up to a different class of how legally we operate. So right now we're doing it with just third-party wallets, but the goal ultimately, like I said kind of at the beginning, is like we want to make it just stupid easy. Like it's got to be super simplistic. Like we really want to bring the simplicity and the user experience of a Web 2 interface into Web 3 so that it's just very seamless and very easy to use. And and feels like a ebook store. It doesn't feel like, yield farming. It's got to be very simple and very straightforward.
Okay. We've got a couple more questions coming through here. This one's an interesting one. I'll try and get through all the questions. There's quite a few that's popping up. This one, what's the biggest pushback you get from publishers, and how much interest is there for tokenizing all these books? So I know you've spoken to a couple of publishers and they're very interested in this model, but what's the negative aspects that they're coming up with, and what are they saying that's bad about tokenizing the platform and books in general?
There's definitely a couple. So we've talked to a lot of publishers, and we actually have a person in New York that has worked, that's on the team now, that has worked with a tremendous amount and worked at publishers as well. Oddly, one of the funniest things that we've heard. So there's what's called the big five publishers. There's basically five large publishers. They control like 60-70% of the entire market. Two of those that we've talked to have specifically said that they will not do anything on a proof of work chain. And that's like the biggest pushback that they've given us.
Wow. Okay, cool. Easy. Well, that's sorted.
We didn't even think, because I'll say that, the spectrum on the other end is like, what's blockchain, right? I mean, they have no idea like what we're even talking about, other than they've heard buzzwords about crypto and NFTs. Which, the proof of work thing is great because it's like, well, it gives us an opportunity to talk about Cardano. And most of the time they're like, what's that? I've never heard of it, which blows my mind because I'm like, it's literally a top 5 chain. I don't know how you haven't heard of it. But I hear that too from people just in the NFT, on the NFT side, from the Ethereum side, when we talk more, especially towards, when we're talking to VCs and investors who have invested heavily into NFT ETH-based projects, and they're like, what's Cardano? And it just kind of blows my mind. So I feel like we become Cardano ambassadors a lot of the time. I'll say too, with the publishers, what in our past life, when we had started another ebook company, it took us several years. And I mean, with a couple of publishers, it literally took 3 or 4 years to get their catalogs onboarded with us. I mean, we were literally beating down the door trying to get in and get them to give us their business. With this, it's been like the exact opposite, where they have been coming directly to us because they're getting pressure from their authors who are saying, hey, we want to do NFT stuff with our books, because they see what's going on in the NFT ecosystem, and all these artists that are making money, and now you see more music stuff and some video things popping up, and they're like, hey, we want, they're putting pressure on their publishers. So the publishers are actually coming to us, asking us to help educate them on NFTs, because they realize
so cool.
What a publisher is to the author. If they're not providing a value added service to the publisher, well, then why would I have you as my publisher? I could go do this on my own. So
yeah, it is a very interesting evolving space, like from the visual artists, now music's going on the blockchain as well, and now these written books all being tokenized and going on the blockchain. It's a very exciting and evolving space, and seeing the NFTs evolving utility and their usage is absolutely amazing. And not people not knowing about Cardano yet is an interesting aspect, and having you guys push it out to the publishers is a really good aspect. Have that low carbon footprint publishing of their ebooks is absolutely amazing. Now, this is an interesting question here. I think we have time for a few more questions to go through. Now, what will the mobile experience be like? So a lot of people read on their mobile device, and Eternal Wallet, for example, has a mobile version of their Web3 wallet. So in theory, we should be able to use this on a mobile device. Have you spoken to them to get it into their little app viewer or anything like that? And what do you guys have planned in the future for being able to read on a mobile device?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we'll definitely be releasing our own mobile apps, as well as we will have an SDK for other wallets and exchanges that want to render books. However, the SDK will be, a basic tool set so that they can render the book and give them the user the ability to read it. with our app then is where, we will build in the technology for the read to earn stuff. So when you're reading in our app, and we've built apps before. So, I guess, side note, when we did our last ebook company, we actually started right when the first iPad came out. So we had built out reader apps prior to, and this was still when Kindle had a standalone device. So before Kindle had an Android or an iOS app, we had already released apps, and we sort of approached it with this idea of just being sort of platform agnostic, and put those out there and continue to work on them. And really, like, our competitive edge then was very limited because of the way the book pricing is mandated in the States. So we focused heavily on the experience, and we actually had a better app rating both in the Android and the iBook store than Kindle's app, because ultimately, our focus is inherently on reading and the experience of it. Theirs is on how can I sell you more books and then also sell you something else along with it. So we'll definitely have our own apps, and we'll provide access to other wallets and exchanges that want to render that as well. Other reading platforms for that matter. If, there's definitely a number of other readers out there, and if they ingest our tool set, then they could allow their readers to read as well.
Okay, brilliant. Now, this is an interesting question about the perpetuity and the royalties. So with NFTs, it's pretty much locked into the blockchain. You get paid out for eternity, essentially. Now, this user mentions that shouldn't it be paid for the life of the author plus 50 years? I'm assuming that's how royalties work in the general publishing industry at the moment. Is that correct? And can that kind of model be replicated on blockchain?
Yeah, so there's definitely limitations. It's interesting because what we're doing is we're really changing the way that IP works and how it's worked for a very long time. So there's limitation now and how long that you can own IP, and that your family and heirs can be paid royalties on that. This is actually a big thing that's going to happen coming up in Congress about Disney, right? Because a certain number of their characters are about to expire. So what has to happen is they have to go, effectively petition and rally and, have a hearing to make justification for why they can continue to receive that. Whereas with blockchain, that's not the case. It's not governed by a central government. So however those royalties are set up and those initial wallets and how they're paid out will, continue to get paid out perpetuity. So it becomes, custodial issue for the royalty beneficiary of how they want to manage that. And if their family or their heirs have access to that, and they continue to receive those royalties in perpetuity as those books continue to move around, which is awesome because nobody can ever stop it, right?
In my opinion, I think that's absolutely fantastic. You keep the royalties going on for forever, as long as the creative exists, which is quite different to how things work now. I could see the only biggest downside is that if that payment address, you've lost your wallet, your seed phrase, or whatever it is.
Right down the seed phrase.
Then those royalties be paid out. It's all governed by the blockchain, but you don't have access to it. So there's that one slight downside.
See it going up every day. See that balance going up and have no way to get to it. Yeah, you're gonna tattoo your seed phrase on you just in case.
Yeah, I probably would if you're earning royalties from a big publishing title or something. It's definitely something you want to back up. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's all the questions that we're getting from the live stream at the moment. And I think this is a good time to wrap up. So Josh, I'm so thankful that you jumped on a live session to talk about the platform updates and everything that's going on at the moment. So thank you for that. And good luck with the mint on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to trying to get on. I think it might be a good time for me. I just got to double check. But it'll be interesting to see how your the launch goes and how the first ever book minting process, I think ever, is going to go on BookToken.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. I appreciate your time and having me on. It's excellent. I love what you do for the community, and I'd say keep it up, man. Everybody loves you.
Yeah, keep working hard. And for anyone that wants any of the links and references for this, it'll all be in the show notes down below and everything on the learncardano.io website. Thank you, Josh.